Thank you for joining us in This Week in Turkey. I'm Murat, Türsan. We begin again with distressing news from Turkey as Turkey continues to battle the flames. 10 days into the inferno, thousands of firefighters, volunteers, helicopters, and water bomber aircraft are working to extinguish the fires threatening residential areas. The European Forest Fire Information Service reported more than 136,000 hectares, or 525 square miles, have burned in Turkey already, about 3 times the annual average. As fires continue to be fed by strong winds, high temperatures, and low humidity, multiple nations have sent aid in the form of logistical support and aircraft.
Turkey continues to battle the flames as wildfires wreak havoc across the country as the Ministry of Agriculture and Forestry reports 18 ongoing fires, 80 ongoing but contained, and 100 extinguished. Turkey is now 10 days into a struggle against the widespread wildfires across the country, as outbreaks, especially in the Aegean and Mediterranean regions, continue to force evacuations. Meanwhile, neighboring countries and allies have reached out with aid to bolster Turkey's under-equipped firefighting capabilities. Although 180 fires have been contained, scores continue to burn, with Muğla and Antalya provinces being disproportionately affected. The European Union's Crisis Management Commissioner, Yanis Lenarčić, announced August 1st that 3 firefighting planes were deployed to Turkey to battle the ongoing blazes sent from Spain and Croatia. Additional aid was also sent by Azerbaijan, Ukraine, Russia, and Iran. Greek Foreign Minister Nikos Dendaias expressed Greece's willingness to provide aid to fight the wildfires. Despite the offer, however, Greek authorities have not yet received an affirmative answer to their offer. The outpouring of aid from neighbors and allies came on the heels of broad criticism domestically over Turkey's lack of disaster preparedness. 2 days into the crisis, Turkey was said to possess only 3 firefighting aircraft, 2 of which had been leased from Russia. Questions were raised as to whether aircraft from the Turkish Aeronautical Association could be used for fighting the blazes. But both President Erdogan and Minister Pakdemirli responded saying that they were old and insufficient for the task at hand. Critics were also quick to point out Turkey's lack of aircrafts for fighting the wildfires, despite the president is said to possess 13 planes of his own. Point that the People's Democratic Party spokesperson, Ebru Günay, mentioned in a press conference shortly after the initial outbreaks.
Joining me now to comment on the matter, ecologist specializing in fire ecology, Ismail Bekar from the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology in Zurich. Mr. Bekar, thank you for joining us.
You're welcome. Thanks for inviting me.
My pleasure. Mr. Bekar, I want to start off by asking you, as a fire ecologist, are the fires currently being managed properly? Are the correct tactics being employed to quell the flames? Also, the government has recently began a campaign to replant the deforested areas. Do you think all of these are the correct courses of action?
Well, I'm not a fire suppression expert. I'm more interested in, I'm more working on fire ecological part of fire. But of course. I just can say that, like, if a fire is a really big one, what I mean with big is, like, if it's more than like 1,000 hectares, if more area is burned, then it's really hard to contain fires. It's really hard to deal with them. We can see that for instance, in Greece, and also in other European countries, in Italy, or in other countries such as US or Australia. So the first response to fire is really important. That's something it needs to be done properly. After that, it's really hard to control because it's not like standard city fire. There's no burning buildings. You can use water and then control the whole building. So I don't want to comment more on that, but what I can say regarding the second part of your question is, fire is not something uncommon in these ecosystems. Mediterranean part of Turkey, also Aegean part of Turkey, is used to have fires, for maybe hundreds and thousands of years. So these ecosystems have the ability to regenerate itself. Like, for instance, pine forest, like red pine forest. We can see that, like, even after 1 year, these forests are starting to turn green, so that they can regenerate themselves, and in 30 years they can reach their old heights as a complete forest. So that's something we need to know, and aggressive interruptions to these ecosystems can result in other unwanted outcomes. So that's an important part. That's something we need to keep in mind while we are somehow like posting on social media, or government officials need to keep this in their mind, because if an aggressive interruptions have been made, then this would result in unwanted outcomes.
I see. And what kind of unwanted outcomes would we be looking at if we were to disturb the natural order of things? Could you expand on that?
I mean, first of all, we don't have unlimited resources, so we can manage, we can use these resources like money and like the workforce. We can use these resources in some other places where more urgency is needed. The second thing is like normally these kind of works are done by the officials, like the Ministry of Forestry or some other related officials, but they know how to manage these areas. But sometimes, depending on the area or depending on the political interactions, other they want this area to turn green in a quick action. So they do some plantations, and these plantations needs to be managed properly. If, let's say, if you choose a wrong tree species, then you change the ecosystem's composition. That's bad for the species pool, the genetic pool of the area, or it's also bad for the tree species, the other species that lives in the region. So these kind of unwanted outcomes can happen.
I see. And I want to move on to, of course, it's been on the mind of many here in Turkey, the causes of the fires. Now, you have mentioned that this is a natural order of things. However, of course, many have, since the fires have occurred consecutively and one right after the other, many have generated theories and even some conspiracy theories. Could you expand on why these fires would occur so rapidly, one after the other?
I mean, we are currently in a fire season. So what I mean with this is like it's hot and dry. So, and there is also the human factor, of course, and we see many fires, and that's something we can expect. Of course, I'm not saying if there are fires, multiple fires, like 20 fires in 35, if there are 35 fires in 20 different cities at the same time, of course, one can speculate on that. But I'm saying we don't need to speculate on that, because after every fire, the firefighters and police are doing an investigation, and they find the reason why it started. So we can wait, and we will see after some time. We will learn the reason of these fires. But there were some speculations, and the problem is in Turkey, many fires, most of the fires are human caused. So there's no objection to that, and that's true. But many fires are not terrorism related. So most of the fires are let's say cigarettes and also unwanted fires, like carelessness, these kind of, like even these electric lines, they can cause fires. So these kind of reasons are more common. So based on that, we don't need to speculate. We can expect these kind of fires during these hot and dry summers. Of course, the important thing is these fires turned big, like they grow very fast. That's also related to these weathers, like these weather and these dry season. These kind of conditions, climatic conditions, hot and dry conditions, first they increase the chance of a fire to ignite. It increases the probability of ignition. Second, if there's an ignition, if there's a fire, it turns big. These conditions fuel these kind of processes.
I see. Now, I'm glad that you touched on the conditions and the climate. Now, of course, as we know, we are in the midst of a climate crisis. And as the temperatures have been steadily increasing around the globe for the last several decades, do you foresee that there will be an increasing number of disasters, such as the one right now?
That's a good question, but I cannot say that we will have these kind of big fires every year. But one can assume that there will be an increase in the future for these kind of events. Because, most of the European countries, most of the Mediterranean ecosystem countries, they are only suppressing these fires. But like I said before, these ecosystems are having these fires for hundreds and thousands of years. So these kind of fires are going to happen. Whatever investment you can throw at it, it's not going to change. We need to address the underlying problems under these fires, and we need to understand the causes or the dynamics of these fires better. So that's something we need to discuss for the future. Otherwise, these kind of catastrophic events, we will see these kind of events in the future.
I see. Mr. Bekar, thank you for joining us.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Our pleasure. In other news, the Biden administration is gearing to launch a new Afghan refugee program where Afghans who have fought with the U.S. and against the Taliban in the 20-year Afghan war will be able to apply for a special immigrant visa, which could include as many as 50,000 or more. The announcement drew widespread condemnation from Turkish officials, however, as the State Department also stressed that under international law, Afghan refugees have the right to apply for asylum in Turkey and that their applications from Turkey will be processed. This all comes at the heels of Turkey's new immigration crisis as more and more Afghans make their way into Turkey via Iran.
We just have one element at the top.
On August 2nd, the U.S. State Department announced that it would accept those working with the U.S. government or U.S.-led military forces in the Afghanistan war through a special program. The State Department said in a statement that the application of Afghans who left their country would be processed. The State Department also stated that Afghans also have the right to apply to the Turkish government or the UN High Commissioner for Refugees for refugee status as their applications are processed. In response, a written statement shared on August 3rd, Turkey's Minister of Foreign Affairs responded to the announcement from the U.S., stating that, firstly, the U.S.'s statement will cause a major migration crisis in our region and will increase the suffering of Afghans on their migration routes. Turkey has hosted the highest number of refugees in the world for the last 7 years, and it was stated that Turkey does not have the capacity to undertake new migration crisis on behalf of a third country. The following statements were also included in Turkey's announcement. If the U.S. wants to accept these people, it is possible to transport them directly by plane. Our country will not, under any circumstance, take over the international responsibilities of third countries. Main opposition party CHP chair Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu took to Twitter amid the controversy and this time in English tweeted, U.S. authorities decided to accept 19,000 Afghans together with their families who had worked for them but who are perceived as enemies by the Taliban as refugees in their own country. They also appointed Turkey as a target country via Iran for more than 1 million of their supporters. I call on the U.S. as a member of the alliance that will govern Turkey in the future. We do not accept those deals that you made with Erdogan. Whatever you have said or relayed to Erdogan are binding only for him, not for the Republic of Turkey.
Amidst the fires and the refugee crisis, Turkey is also still battling the coronavirus. According to the health ministry, out of a population of 82 million, 75 million total individual shots were given. However, we are currently seeing just over 28 million fully inoculated with both shots. In addition, an old problem of sourcing vaccines has resurfaced. Earlier this year, the Turkish government came under fire as problems with sourcing sufficient number of vaccines were evident. It appears now that hospitals and clinics are having to turn patients away and reschedule their appointments as vaccine availability reaches a bottleneck.
On July 31st, Minister of Health Fahrettin Koca announced that there would be a decrease in vaccine shipments for several days, while urging citizens to make an appointment to receive the BioNTech vaccine. According to Dr. Emrah Kremli, head of the family medicine branch of the Turkish Medical Association, the BioNTech vaccine was not available for distribution on August 2nd and 3rd, so we had to turn away patients who had arrived for their appointment because there was no vaccine. Appointments made on August 2nd were rescheduled to the 5th, and appointments on August 3rd to the 6th. For the first dose of the BioNTech vaccine, the earliest appointments at hospitals were for August 8th and on the 9th for clinics. Istanbul Medical Chamber ITO Secretary General Dr. Osman Kucuk Kosmanoğlu insisted that the problem in the supply of vaccines must be solved urgently, and a large part of the society should be vaccinated by the beginning of autumn. On August 4th, Koca announced the BioNTech vaccine shipments began arriving late last night. Nearly 13 million doses will be delivered by Monday. In response to Koca's statement, Kucuk Kosmanoğlu stated, the vaccine problem in the hospitals and clinics in Istanbul started in the beginning of this week. This supply issue looks like it will last, but hopefully it won't. Unfortunately, the BioNTech vaccine could not be administered on Monday and Tuesday. Since the patients weren't notified about the lack of availability, there was congestion problems. On one hand, there is a government that cannot eliminate vaccine hesitation and cannot conduct a proper vaccination campaign. On the other hand, there are problems with the vaccine supply. Despite these developments, President Erdogan announced that there would be no new coronavirus restrictions and lockdowns. He added that it would continue to be a voluntary vaccination program as opposed to instating a vaccine mandate.
Moving on to the economy, Turkey is also grappling with rising inflation. According to the information from the Turkish Statistical Institute, annual inflation in July 2021 was 19% in consumer prices, 25% in food prices, and 45% in producer price index. Although the average price of 81 out of 415 items decreased in July, 50 remained unchanged, while the average price of 284 saw an increase. In June 2021, the annual inflation increase was 17.5% in consumer prices, 20% in food prices, and 43% in producer prices. In other news, some faculty members at Galatasaray University are being forced to vacate their positions and leave the country as the Council of Higher Education introduces lingual aptitude requirements for foreign teachers. Galatasaray University is the heir to the famed Galatasaray High School, established in 1481, some 540 years ago, both known for their education primarily done in Turkish and in French. Thus, of course, Galatasaray University is home to many educators from France. However, as a backlash to recent developments in France requiring B2 level French proficiency for imams and Turkish lecturers working in France, the government has instituted sweeping changes that some say target French faculty members specifically, as the Council of Higher Education now requires university staff to pass a B2 level Turkish language exam in order to keep their positions.
In February of this year, the Council of Higher Education made it compulsory for French academics to know Turkish at a B2 level in order to be able to teach at a university in Turkey. On May 29th, academics took an exam held by Yunus Emre Institute, affiliated with the Yunus Emre Foundation, whose founding committee included Turkey's 11th president, Abdullah Gül. 4 academic faculty members who are unable to obtain the B2 certificates in Turkish have departed from Galatasaray University. 2 academics will work to obtain their B2 certificates between now and September. Dr. Elgiz Yilmaz Tuntaş, director of Galatasaray University's School of Foreign Languages, said in the following statement, "As Galatasaray University, we are not the leading actor, but rather a part of the system. Our rector is still discussing with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs at the diplomatic level whether any steps can be taken or a compromise can be reached within the scope of reciprocity." A Galatasaray faculty member forced to leave their post due to the newly instituted Turkish B2 requirements said the following, "Politicians are using the future of this country's youth as a political tool. They care little about the quality of education being given, and are concerned solely with the political repression. This decision calls into question the place of education in society. In February, the Council of Higher Education made B2 Turkish proficiency compulsory for French citizens teaching at Turkish universities. This decision by the Council of Higher Education was made in response to France's anti-Islamic separatism law, which requires B2 French proficiency for imams and Turkish lecturers working in France.
That's it for us in This Week in Turkey. I have been Murat Türsan, and thank you for joining us.
Burası 3 gündür aralıksız olarak yanıyor ve sabah saatlerinden itibaren gece boyunca da süren yangın hala devam ediyor ve yayılmış durumda. Yangına müdahale edilemiyor ama yöre halkı, orman muhafızlarına, itfaiyecilere destek oluyorlar. Biz de onlarla beraber şu anda yangının kalbine doğru ilerliyoruz. Bu yangın söner mi bu şekilde?
Sönmez. Havadan destek istiyoruz.
Yaklaşık bir haftadır burada bir yangınla mücadele etmelerine rağmen çok da bir ilerleme kaydedemiyorlar ve hepsinde aynı söz var. Uçaklar gelmedikçe bir şey yapamayız diyorlar.